Welcome in to episode 2 of Through the Whistle. I'm once again your host, Ty Belcher, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about last night's matchup between the Denver Broncos and Los Angeles Chargers, which included a big meltdown from my guy, Russell Wilson, as well as getting you guys ready for the upcoming season that tips off tonight in the NBA between the Boston Celtics and 76ers, and then the Warriors hosting the Lakers in tonight's nightcap. So I'll be getting you guys ready with some predictions and hopefully getting you guys some season-long bets that can, hopefully win us some money. So let's jump right into the Monday Night Football game with, my guy, Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited. So yesterday, if you watched, I talked about how Russell Wilson just hasn't looked the same, looks pretty much cooked. This whole persona of him saying, let Russ cook, let Russ cook. He hasn't been cooking at all. You want him out the kitchen as far away as possible because he has played absolutely abysmal. So, of course he comes out and plays absolutely amazing just to prove me wrong, like I predicted yesterday. He's going to try and make me eat my words. And for those first 10 passing attempts, first couple drives of the game last night, he looked absolutely amazing. 10 of 10 for 116 yards and a touchdown. Early 10-0 lead against a pretty good to decent Los Angeles Chargers team. And then after that, the real Russell Wilson had to set back in. He goes on from that point, after the 10 for 10 start, his next 18 passing attempts, he had only 5 completions for only a whopping 72 yards. And scored 3 points, which is kind of essentially was 3/4 of play since they went to overtime. But this man, Russell Wilson, I would say is holding back the Denver Broncos. Last year, everybody was saying the Denver Broncos are a quarterback away because of how well they always play against the Kansas City Chiefs and how well they play against the Chargers and how well they play against the Raiders and so on and so forth. But it's still looking like they're still a quarterback away. Last year it was, blame Drew Lock. Everybody's going to be fine. The defense is fine, all this other stuff. But this year, if we're being honest, you have to put the blame on Russell Wilson. He comes out there, gets paid, and everybody's expecting he's free from Seattle. It's looking like Seattle's free of him. Geno Smith's out there in Seattle playing willing and dealing every Sunday, leading I want to say he's top 5, top 10 in passing yards, while Russell Wilson's out here having his first non-200 yard game. Well, first game having less than 200 yards this whole season, and ultimately a loss. He had multiple chances to try and win the game down the stretch, multiple chances to try and get him in field goal range in overtime. He just couldn't move the ball. At one point, he went 4 possessions and couldn't get 12 yards. I know this way too well because I put my own money on Russell Wilson throwing 200 yards. 200 yards isn't anything to gawk at. It's like 200 yards is bare minimum for a guy of Russell Wilson's caliber. Even this whole season when he's playing bad, he hasn't had a game with less than 200 yards until last night when I obviously put my money on him. But the Chargers shouldn't have won that game. The Broncos, and mostly every facet of the game, looked like they were the better team. Defense played great. You had Browning from Ohio State playing absolutely insane still, with it getting his second 2 games. Well, over the course of the last 2 games last night, looking like an unstoppable beast out there, looking like a steal of the draft a couple years ago. And then you have Patrick Surtain, who goes out there, essentially, we're being honest, takes away Mike Williams from the game, completely wipes him out. Surtain only allowed 1 catch for 4 yards last night off 5 targets. Justin wasn't really looking his way. I don't blame him because if you throw at Surtain, you're basically saying, I'm just going to put all my chips in the middle of the table, hope for the best, because Surtain is going to knock the ball away or get an interception. With his length and his athleticism, it's just no way that Surtain is not going to make an incompletion happen. But back to the Denver's lack of offense. You have a guy like Judy out there who, he had a couple of drops last night, but still getting open. You have Sutton getting open. And you have a new guy right in the backfield because due to Melvin Gordon's, fumbling issues, and Williams back there, he played pretty good running the ball. Russ looked pretty good running the ball. But when it came to the passing game, it's just not there. All the things that Richard Sherman said, like I said yesterday, all the things that Richard Sherman said are looking 100% true. You can't carry a team. All this let Russ cook stuff is just propaganda. And let's ride, his favorite slogan for the Bronco ever since he became a Bronco, it's looking like Russell Wilson's last ride. The reference to Undertaker I don't know what you can honestly do with him. You sign into a lofty contract in which I don't really see anybody wanting to take that. It's a very, 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 once again, very bad contract that is kind of reminiscent of another Russell, but in a different sport, Russell Westbrook's contract, where you paid him all this money, but who wants to have that contract on their books? Because there's a lot of teams out there who are pretty good, who like the Denver Broncos are a quarterback away. But a quarterback away every year doesn't mean that you want to get in your situation like the Indianapolis Colts with Matt Ryan, who finally had a good game last Sunday against the Jags, where you get into trading a lot for this guy just for him to do nothing for you. And that's looking exactly like what the Denver Broncos just did with Russell Wilson. And you have no future draft capital. So you're essentially stuck with Russell Wilson, crossing your fingers and hoping that he can get it together at some point this season. If not, you're in for a long season, especially for a team that, had lofty goals this offseason. Everybody's kind of anointing them the AFC West champions because, they're coming in with a last place schedule. What more can you ask for? You have a last place schedule, and you get up to this point. I want to say they're 3-3. Yeah, I want to say they're 3-3 right now, and they're not even into the actual meat of their schedule where things look like they're going to get tough down the stretch. Got to play Kansas City a couple times. You got to play the Chargers again. You got to play the Raiders again. And I just don't see how this team is going to be above 500, let alone a playoff team, especially in the AFC West. In the AFC that's, not looking too hot, but there's teams that aren't going to win the division, such as Miami Dolphins due to Tua's injury, which literally set them back. The Titans seem to getting Derrick Henry rolling, the all reliable. But that third spot is that last spot. You lost to the Colts, so you lost the tiebreaker right there off the bat. And then you're going to have the Chargers, who are probably going to be fighting for that other spot too, that last wild card spot. The Jags are looking pretty good, even though they're kind of up and down. Trevor looked pretty good on Sunday. Very hot team, kind of hot, hit or miss every Sunday, but I don't see how the Denver Broncos can even think of making it into the NFL playoffs. But with all things being said, Denver, hope for the best. Hopefully, his shoulder gets healthy, because that's what a lot of people are blaming it on, his shoulder being injured, which is the same injury that they said Dak sustained last training camp. But it's looking like this is going to be a pretty bleak path to another playoff-less season. All right, so when we get back from break, we're going to get into the Eastern Conference predictions. And I just hope that you guys don't try to tear my head off with my predictions for this upcoming Eastern Conference. Welcome back in from break. Once again, I'm Ty Belcher, and this is Through the Whistle. So tonight we have the first game of the NBA season tipping off between the Boston Celtics and the 76ers, two teams who have much anticipation for lofty NBA Finals goals, hopefully hoisting NBA championship. But there are some teams out there who are in a different sweepstakes, a different end goal, and that's to get Victor #1 overall. The freaking nature, 7 foot. I want to say 7'4", 7'2", 7'4", can dribble, can shoot, can do everything. It's literally a player that you can't even make on 2K. But there's going to be teams that are just going to go all in, full-blown tank, something very reminiscent of the 76ers a couple of years ago when they went to go get Joel Embiid and all these other guys. Trust the process, I guess. But with that being said, let's go ahead and say who I'm going to go ahead and say who I believe is going to be in last place this all season after this NBA season's over. And I don't think there will be any objections to this at all. I think the Indiana Pacers will be in last place overall in the whole league at the end of the season. Not just last place in the Eastern Conference, because that's going to be kind of a given. I know the Eastern Conference is pretty young at the bottom end, but I just don't see the Indiana Pacers. I don't see them honestly getting 30 wins. I'll be very surprised if Tyrese Halliburton and Buddy Hield are still on the team come the deadline. I think they go move off those two, get some more picks, kind of go for the whole full reboot, hope for the best. But I just don't see them winning 30, 25, let alone 30 games this NBA season. In 14th place, I think the Orlando Magic will be making an appearance. But in their defense, I think that 13 and 14 will be very close between them and the Magic, Pistons and the Magic. I think that Paolo Banchero was a great pickup, probably the best. I think was the best player in college basketball last season. But even with Cole Anthony having a pretty good season last year, I don't think the addition of Paolo Banchero will actually tip the tides too much. But they will get away from that first overall pick, which is pretty good. I can see them winning probably about 26, 27 games, 26 to 30 games. Make a pretty good step forward in the future. But the Pistons look like I kind of had a problem. If it wasn't for the two teams I have above them, the three teams I have above them, I would say that they're a play-in team. But they're just not ready to take that next step. Probably get around 32 wins. If I were to take their over-under, if it's at 31 and a half, I'd probably take the over. But Cade Cunningham had a really good season. I'm not going to say pretty great. He had a really good season last year. And I just think that the Pistons are taking the right steps to go forward, get away from the bottom of the barrel, try to get away from that whole little stigma that surrounds the Detroit sports teams as a whole. And at 12 are the New York Knicks, who, the coin of phrase I saw on Twitter this offseason, who are going to put out there the mid-3 instead of a big 3. So the mid-3 consists of R.J. Barrett, who's, kind of young, hopefully trying to figure his way out around this league still, even though he's a couple years in. You got Julius Randle, who you overpaid after the season he had during the pandemic season, where they got to, I want to say, the 5th seed a couple of seasons ago, overpaid him, looked absolutely horrible last season. Was this, I don't know, reminiscent of how he was with the Lakers, not looking worth the money, not looking worth, like he didn't look like he was worth the pick back when he played in LA. But then you have Jalen Brunson, who I think you essentially did the same exact thing for. The Knicks basically paid him because of how well he played last year for the Mavericks while Luka was gone, where he played sensational against the Jazz, got him to, I want to say, a 2-1 lead, but that's against the Jazz. I can go out there and put up some points against the Jazz. Let me get Rudy Gobert in front of me. I'm going to go by him, score some points. But he did have a pretty solid playoff performance the whole series. Well, every series with the Mavs last year. But two of those series were as a number 2. You're going to New York, where you're probably going to be the number 1 option. If not number 1, you're 1B behind RJ Barrett. And I just don't see Jalen Brunson being a guy who can, shoulder that type of weight and then also win games. So that's why I have them at number 12. We have the Hornets. I have the Hornets at number 11. Do not think they have done anything to get away from this little area, this little purgatory that they're in. That is the whole play-in system. Last 2 years, they're the number 10 seed. Got absolutely baffled. But the back-to-back years, LaMelo doesn't play too well in the play-in games. Rozier didn't play too well either. And I just don't see anything different. They didn't really make any key additions. You're just hoping that LaMelo can just take that next step and, shoulder the team, try and get them a couple more wins. But I just don't see that happening. Don't even see them making the play-in. At number 10, I have the team that has LaMelo Ball's brother, Lonzo Ball, and the Chicago Bulls at 10. I don't think the Chicago Bulls are a bad team by any means. But not having LaMelo, last season they started off great. But then Lonzo Ball goes down, and then things just take a deep dive down, and they just fall. I want to say they fall to around the 7th seed last season, 7th, 8th seed. And 6th seed. Yeah, it was the 6th seed. I think without having Lonzo Ball for the unforeseeable future, this Bulls team's going to struggle. DeMar obviously still can't shoot the three after all these years, even though the NBA has changed dramatically to go towards three-point shooting. Just hasn't developed one. Zach LaVine kind of hit or miss. He's going to give you your 20 points, but I just don't see the Bulls making it, making it to the playoffs, solidifying it without being in the play-in. Number 9, I have the Washington Wizards. I think with a healthy Bradley Beal and a healthy Kristaps Porzingis, the Wizards can make some stuff shake. I think they can, probably fight for the 8th seed with the next team I'm going to say, but probably fight for the 8th seed. And I honestly think that they can beat the Bulls in a matchup in the play-in, and I think they can beat this next team with a healthy Bradley Beal, healthy Kristaps Porzingis, and with Kyle Kuzma, who showed a couple of flashes last year, but he's a third option. He does what a third option needs to do. So the team that I think that the Wizards can beat in the play-in game are the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, they made a great addition to offseason. Yeah, they've made the playoffs each of the last 2 seasons. And we're all expecting Trae Young, to play good like Trae Young does. But I don't think they should have won. They should have made the playoffs last season, let alone this year, where they made a couple additions to try and make them better. But I just don't see them making the playoffs at all. I think the Wizards are a better matchup. You have Kristaps Porzingis, who can stretch the floor. You have Kyle Kuzma, who's a 3-and-D player. And you have Bradley Beal, who can score at will whenever he wants, if he's healthy. So without that, when the regular season ends, I think the Atlanta Hawks will be the number 8 seed, but I do not see them making the playoffs. Who I see them losing to in the first playing game are the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors always find a way to make the playoffs. Great home court advantage. You got Pascal out there. Hopefully, you can keep the young guys, such as Barnes, healthy this season. Try to keep Van Vliet out there as much as possible. So I think there's no way that they miss the playoffs. They never miss the playoffs. The Toronto Raptors. They might not make any noise in the playoffs, but they're going to make the playoffs. At number 6, I think this is going to be the biggest drop-off from any Eastern Conference team, and that's the Miami Heat dropping all the way down from 1st to 6th. Don't see how the Miami Heat are going to make any noise this season. Yeah, Jimmy Butler is a great player, top 10 guy in my opinion, but I just do not see them, really making that into anything. Because you have other teams such as, never mind, I'm going to get to that later on. I'm going to go ahead and get to it now. But you have Bam and Adebayo, who I don't think you can win with as a center. Yeah, if you put him at power forward, yeah, great. You're going to win games like that. But having him at center, and then you have him guarding guys such as Giannis and all these other bigs, all these other wings and bigs, I don't think it's a lot to ask on one person. Kind of saw it with DeAndre Ayton a couple years ago in the NBA Finals when he had to go guard Giannis, but also be center. You had to worry about him guarding Giannis, but we also need his rebounding. But it's just not going to work. I just don't think it's sustainable. I think they should have went out there and got a great center, but they didn't. I think they should have got DeAndre Ayton, but we all saw how DeAndre Ayton's whole contract and free agency ended up playing out with the Suns matching their offer. At number 5, It's just regular season stuff. So I think number 5 will be the Brooklyn Nets. After a very underwhelming last season with a lot of background noise, you got Kyrie not playing most of the season, Harden demanding a trade, and then KD, as soon as Kyrie gets back, essentially being hurt for the tail end of the season, he just couldn't get any chemistry going. And hopefully this season, Steve Nash learned how to draw up some plays instead of just giving the ball to Kyrie or KD and saying, go. Like, here's the ball, go make stuff work like it's a pickup game. I think this season the Nets they'll be the team that we've all expected. But towards the tail end, prioritize, resting KD and Kyrie because, they don't have the best injury history, but I just don't see how the Nets don't become, top 4 or 5 seeds in the Eastern Conference. At number 4, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had a great offseason, adding Donovan Mitchell. This Cavs team played great last year until Jared Allen got hurt. Things kind of went downhill, dropped from, a solidified playoff team all the way down to a play-in team. This season, with the addition of Mitchell, like I said, Mitchell, even back when he was in Utah, they emphasized playing well in the regular season, getting a nice regular season record, try to get home court advantage. And being from Ohio, the Q is going to get loud. And there's a lot of energy going into this season, a lot of hopes, a lot of expectations for this team where they weren't previously there last season, and especially not the year before. But you got the 2 trees down low and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, who are 2 of the best bigs in the NBA. Jared Allen, who I would say is a top 3 big in the NBA. And then you added a guy like Donovan Mitchell to a backcourt with Darius Garland, who played sensational last season down the stretch, but after the Colin Sexton injury, just dealing. But with Donovan Mitchell being there, Darius Garland can just take a back seat, can focus on distributing the ball like he likes, like it seemed like he liked to, in the playoff play-in game. I just think that with him being able to with Garland being able to defer to Donovan Mitchell, it'll make things easier for the Cavs, and the Cavs will become a top 4 seed due to prioritizing winning games in the regular season. And I honestly think that the Cavs will win their series. Well, their regular season series against the Nets. Against the Nets due to the Cavs having what the Nets lack, which is, any depth down low, any bigs down low. I think Evan Mobley and Jared Allen take KD out to the shack and just do whatever and just bully him down low because, the Nets like having a small lineup, having KD out there because who doesn't like having KD at the 4? But I just don't see the Cavs not being a top 4 seed with all that being said. At number 3, I see the Philadelphia 76ers, who tip off the season tonight, being the number 3 seed. I think they'll be the 3 seed because Joel Embiid has to improve this season again after being snubbed, what I would say is snubbed for the NBA MVP last season. And I think we'll see James Harden, being the same James Harden, wanting to distribute. He's going to distribute more because in the regular season, he doesn't need to score at will like you want him to in the playoffs, with the tour dates every April. But, that's a story for a different day. It's a story for the playoff podcast that's going to be in a couple months. And then you got Tyrese Maxey. I think he's going to take another big step this season. Going to, take the reins officially as a number 2 on that team. You got Tobias Harris, who is a great, third, fourth option on the team, which is going to help a lot. And you got PJ Tucker, who's going to bring defense because we all know James Harden does not play defense. It's no secret. We all know it doesn't happen. But with the addition of PJ Tucker, the small ball lineup is not that small. You got PJ Tucker who can play the 4, who does a pretty good job on most 4s in the league. He played a 3 or 4 position. But you also will have help down low, from Joel Embiid and then guys helping on the wing, such as Tobias Harris, which I think is going to be a great addition. Which I think is going to be great for them overall. At number 2, it's going to be kind of surprising, but this team always stays in the 1 to 3 range every season, ever since their main player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, has taken the catastrophic jump into stardom, MVP level player. I think the best player in the NBA right now. So you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, a healthy Chris Middleton, and a healthy Drew Holiday, knock on wood. I don't see that team not winning 50 to 60 games like they always do. But I do think after what happened last season with Chris Middleton getting hurt, I do think that they'll kind of, tone it down every once in a while, kind of give these guys some rest in between there on some of these long road trips, try to preserve their bodies for another long playoff run. Because, kind of saw with LeBron, you saw with LeBron, you saw with the Warriors, all these seasons of playing into June, May, late May, is going to catch up to eventually. And I think the Bucks will, Nick Nurse will pay that into consideration and try to keep this team as healthy as possible so they can make a playoff run. Because we all know the Bucks have no problem winning on the road in the playoffs. They can go to any environment and win. So I think they will prioritize health over too many wins. But I still think they win about 55 to 60 games and essentially win the East in the regular season. But I just think that the Boston Celtics, who I think will have the best record in the regular season in the East, will be able to outmatch them eventually. Because last season the Celtics started off horrible, 500. I want to say started off 22-22, and then after the All-Star break, just picked it up. Even with Udoka not being able to coach for the whole season, I don't see anything changing. This team has the same foundation with Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and then at some point getting Williams back down low, a great center who we saw a lot of promising things from last season, coming back to help them. So I see this team winning probably 65 games this season. Celtics look like they're, has something to prove this season. Jason Tatum being told that, oh yeah, you're shying away from the moment. I think he takes that personally. The whole Mamba-esque thought process that he has. So now that I've told y'all the standings, let's get into who I think is going to actually win in the Eastern Conference. So like I already told you guys, I think the Nets are going to be a 5 seed. So with their path will essentially be Nets versus Cavs in the first round. I think the Nets are going to end up beating them in the playoffs because at some point, Kyrie and KD are going to take over like we were all expecting to happen against the Celtics last year, which never ended up coming to fruition. But I do think the Nets end up beating the Cavs first round, probably 4-2. Cavs still a couple. Well, not still a couple because they're going to be the home team. But they win a couple games at home. But I think the Nets ultimately are too experienced, too much for the Cavs to handle. And then they end up beating the Celtics in the second round. A little revenge for Kyrie and the guys. And then on the other side, I think the Bucks will run away with it. End up playing the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals like I thought what happened last season, like most thought what happened last season. I think the Bucks are just still too much for mostly any team in the NBA. You have Milwaukee, who's just lengthy everywhere, has speed, has defense. I don't see how the Nets can just get past that. I think the Bucks probably beat the Nets in 6 or 7 again. But with Middleton, I don't see anybody beating that Bucks team. But I will keep that for the next segment after I get into the next segment of Through the Whistle, where we'll be talking about the Western Conference and the projections I have for the standings at the end of the regular season. Just the regular season, not my predictions for who will win the Western Conference. That's going to be at the tail end of this segment. So just like for the Eastern Conference, I'm going to start at the bottom because get these teams out the way. I think at 15th and last place in the Western Conference, you will see the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz traded away Rudy Gobert as well as Donovan Mitchell, as we see, but got Colin Sexton in return. But I still don't see this team being any good when they actually step foot on the court. I think Colin Sexton is going to average about 23 points every night. But I just don't think the Jazz will be any good. At 14, I think the Rockets, a very young team with a lot of talent, they're going to win a couple games. I don't think the bottom tier of this conference in the West is going to be as bad as the bottom being the Pacers. So I think these next 3 to 4 teams are going to be pretty decent. Not going to be complete trash. They're going to be complete poverty, But 14, the Rockets, like I said, a lot of great young guys. Hopefully they can get a couple more wins. I think they kind of throw their hat into the Victor sweepstakes, trying to get him after all the picks that they acquired over the past couple seasons. And at 13, I think is going to be the Spurs. First time we're going to be the lowest we've ever seen the Spurs. No DeJounte Murray. I just don't see how. I'm not the type to bet against Pop, even though I'm the type to bet against Pop when it comes to actually putting my money down. But I just don't see the Spurs having like any players who will shoulder enough of the responsibility to win 35-ish games. I feel like that's kind of a tall task for them. Even 30 wins, I feel like it's going to be a lot. At 12, right above the Spurs, I think we'll see the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm just a big fan of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he's a great player, can get a bucket anytime he wants, nice size. And the Thunder, I want to say they want to throw their hat into the Victor sweepstakes as well. Like most of these young teams who have been built around tanking the last couple of years. But I don't think that they will, pay attention to as much. They'll probably try to throw some draft picks in there. Throw some draft picks in the trade, try to move up. But I don't really think they're going to go full-blown tank, this season. So last year, they're essentially covering machines down the stretch. So this team obviously has some talent. It's all about if their team is going, like their organization will allow them to win games. At number 11, we have the most poverty, not the most poverty, let me say this. This is the most purgatory team in the NBA. More than the Pistons, more than the Pacers. This team is the literal epitome of purgatory. And that is the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings are always, too good to get a high draft pick, but too bad to actually make some noise in the NBA, like when it comes to winning games. They have great players such as De'Aaron Fox. I want to say, and they have a big who I can't think of off the top of my head, who they can help win games, but there's just not enough. It's not enough in the current NBA, especially in the Western Conference when you have teams that are above them, such as the Nuggets, Warriors, and Clippers, and Mavs, Lakers, all these other teams who just have star-studded teams, star players on their teams who've been there, done that, can win games whenever they want. Well, in some cases, win games whenever they want. We kind of saw with the Lakers last year what happened. But the Kings just don't have enough firepower. Going to win too many games to try to get Victor, try to get a top 5 pick. Going to have way too many wins for that. So I think they're just going to be stuck in this constant purgatory that they're kind of doomed to stay in for probably, unless De'Aaron Fox chooses to leave, which could happen, but I doubt happens. At number 10, we're going to see the guy who got a NBA, I want to say 75. Yeah, NBA 75 nod over players such as Dwight Howard, Tracy McGrady. And that's the Damian Lillard-led Trailblazers. I don't care if Damian Lillard's healthy or not. Well, healthy, his health is going to depend where they end up falling or how high they end up getting. But I think even best case scenario, I don't see the Trailblazers getting past probably the number 10 seed. I don't think it's going to happen. They make the play-in. Dame's going to do what Dame does, win about 35, 38 games. Get them to be a, formidable team. But we all know it's going to be the same whispers about, hey, Dame needs to go. Dame needs to leave. But we all know he doesn't. I know he says, oh, yeah, I want to win one here. But you're kind of going down the Bradley Beal path of, yeah, I want to win one here, but I'm seeing like you want to choose the money over it. Which, hey, over $200 million, who am I to say no? We all say, oh, no, I wouldn't do that. $200 million is in your face. There's a lot of things we're going to be like, you know what, maybe when it isn't that important. But his legacy is going to take a major hit. I think eventually he does leave, but I don't see that happening this season. So I think the Trailblazers will be at number 10. At number 9, this kind of hurts me to say, but the biggest drop-off in the Western Conference, bigger than the drop-off that I think will happen in the Eastern Conference. I think the Phoenix Suns go from a top 3 seed all the way down to a number 9 seed. You have all this turmoil inside the organization with Monty Williams and DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton kind of seems like he doesn't want to be there. You have Monty Williams who benched him against the Mavs in a series where DeAndre Ayton played horrible. And as I'm not a Suns fan. I'm going to lie. I'm not a Suns fan. I'm a CP3 fan. But it was a series that he should have took over. You're the only big on the court. Why aren't you putting in? You can't put the ball in the bucket. You can't get rebounds. It was literally the hardest thing to watch as a Suns fan last season when we got absolutely trounced by a Dallas Mavs team. And that's just, it was just sad. After we won all these games again for second straight season, all these lofty goals of, oh yeah, we're going to make it back to the NBA Finals. And my guy, Chris Paul, is not, it's not like he doesn't show us some of this playing. Chris Paul, I think we're going to start seeing extreme decline. We're going to see him, pass the ball like he's going to be what Chris Paul is, which is a pass-first point guard, true point guard in the league. I don't think he averages more than 13 points this season. But we'll still see the assists being there. But Crowder's going to be probably gone by the deadline because even though Crowder's not that good, but Crowder gets the job done on certain nights. Hopefully, best case scenario, you have some of the young guys pick it up. Hopefully get us to like a top 5 seed, but don't really see that happening, especially with at Chris Paul's age. At number 8, I think we're going to see the same team that we saw, win their NBA Finals last season in the play-in. That's the Timberwolves. I do think Anthony Bennett takes another large step this season. He's going to be he's a great player. Cat's going to play probably good because, don't have to play the center role. We all see how he won the 3-point competition last year. Kind of likes playing the stretch forward position more than he likes playing that center. So the addition of Rudy Gobert, I think that will help a lot. But I do not think that they will be as good as the teams I have above them. Even though I do see Cat and Anthony Bennett both having better seasons than they did last year. But with the subtraction of Pat Bev, who, he's not that good, not as good as advertised, not a top guy, like people try to make it seem. His defense not being there will be noticed, especially, I think a lot will come down to getting D'Angelo Russell going. Hopefully D'Angelo Russell picks it back up this season, like he did with the Nets a couple seasons ago, in his last season there. But I highly doubt that. I think Timberwolves stay secure in the 8th seed, even throughout the play-in. Probably beat the Suns in a one and done situation. So the bottom 6 is going to stay the same. In the top 8 are going to be the same. I don't see anybody losing and dropping out of the playoffs after the top 8 standings. At number 7, I think the Memphis Grizzlies are also going to fall down a nice amount. They didn't really add anybody too crazy on the offseason. John Morant's still a top guy. I think he solidifies him being a top 5 point guard this season, but I don't really see the team around him being able to, sustain that same winning that they did last season, especially when he was out, which made absolutely no sense. I want to say they were above 60% win percentage of last year when Ja was out, which I don't see them duplicating this season. At 6, we have the Lakers. Of course, we have to have the Lakers. You have LeBron, greatest of all time. I don't see the greatest of all time missing the playoffs back-to-back seasons. I think the addition of Pat Bev being there, Russell Westbrook may or may not being there the whole season. I think he probably gets moved for somebody on the Pacers, either Halliburton or Buddy. Best case scenario, both. But I don't see the Lakers not making the playoffs back-to-back seasons again. I think Anthony Davis stays healthy this season, for relatively healthy for him, which is probably about 50 games. Probably rests a lot of the other 30 games. Probably plays, hopefully, best case scenario, 60 games. I think a 60 to 70 games played LeBron and a 50 to 60 game played Anthony Davis can win you a nice lump sum of those games. Probably go about 45 and 15 in those games. Hopefully put him in enough best foot forward to win those games, give him the nice high spot. LeBron can win you a couple games by himself, even at this advanced age, but the king, never doubt the king. Who am I? You never doubt the king, never doubt the GOAT. Y'all wouldn't doubt Jordan, who is y'all's GOAT, even though he's not better than LeBron. But Lakers are going to win it. They're going to win enough games. I think the problem is for the Lakers, one of the biggest problems that aren't really being talked about enough, that they have to play the Warriors and Clippers within their own division. So that's best case scenario. I think they split both of those, and we will see the first part of the Lakers and Warriors, kind of series, best of 4 tonight with the ring ceremony. But don't see them being higher than a 5 seed at best. And at 5, we have the biggest jump. We have the New Orleans Pelicans. You have Zion Williamson coming back, much anticipated, looks better than ever, looks better than he did in college, looks healthy in shape, ready to go. If he stays healthy, I'm not going to say that Zion needs to take a back seat, but I think it will help if Zion takes a back seat. If you have Brandon Ingram as your number 1, and then CJ being like a number 3, trying to be a little kick-out guy, deferring to him every once in a while, Zion throw it to him down low, I think you'll be a very, very dangerous team. So I think Brandon Ingram is probably one of the best scorers in the NBA right now. My friend Chandler always brings him up because he's very, very biased towards him. But Brandon Ingram is a bucket. Baby KD, if I were to say so myself. Can score lengthy, he's lengthy, can score from any level. At the rim, mid-range, has a pretty good 3-point shot. I honestly think the Pelicans should have beat the Suns last year, but it didn't have enough star power, didn't have enough that second guy, because CJ was we all know how CJ McCollum is. We all saw him in Portland. It's kind of up and down like a roller coaster. But you never kind of know what he's going to give you as a number 2. But as a number 3, I think it'll be great. Zion, you have a big 3 of Brandon Ingram, Zion, and CJ McCollum with guys off the bench like Valanciunas. And you have Valanciunas down low. It's going to be a great season for the New Orleans Pelicans. Very reminiscent of when they had Anthony Davis and Boogie and Rondo not even a couple years ago anymore, about 6-7 years ago. And then at number 4, we have the team that I'm calling it now. Go ahead, say this, all of it. This team will have the MVP this season. That team being the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic, you're hearing it here, probably not first, because Nick Wright has been on this train for years now, his Slovenian son. Luka Doncic is going to win the MVP. The Mavs, a couple years ago in the bubble when they used to beat up on the Clippers, they were always a 6 seed team. But I think with Luka he's going to jump out to a great start this season. I think he's going to average enough, like his stats are going to be, good enough to win the MVP this year. I think he's going to have to win the MVP for them to be a top 4 team, or at least, average around those numbers. But this Mavs team, yeah, they're not that good all around. But, you have Hardaway coming back. And I want to say they added Christian Wood this offseason. Those are 2 big additions that will help the Mavs a lot. I think Luka probably averages about 28 points, 6 rebounds, probably like 6 or 7 assists. I think that will win him the MVP over guys like Joel Embiid, who will probably come in second once again. You're going to have probably Giannis, who will probably come in third once again. But, that whole realm is always the same each and every season. At 3, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. Obviously, we all know Kawhi is going to be back. Kawhi being back is probably one of the biggest additions in the NBA this season. Kawhi is going to, he's probably only going to give you 60 games, but 67 games, 65 games probably to be exact, 64, 65 games. But in those games, they're probably going to win about 50 of those games with him and Paul George out there, especially with the addition of John Wall. They'll probably bring in another big. Reggie Jackson, who didn't look too bad last season. And, okay, I'm using that not too bad term loosely, but I think the Clippers will be a very good team. John Wall coming off the bench will help tremendously. You got Kawhi, Paul George, the two best two-way players in the league, above, just like both of them slightly above Jimmy Butler, but the 2 best two-way players in the NBA. So I think they will get to a 3 seed. Ty Lue, great mastermind at coach, will help a lot. So these next 2 seeds, I think, we'll see a slight margin in wins between them. And those 2 teams are going to be the Warriors and the Nuggets. I do ultimately think the Warriors will end up with a 2nd seed, only because we know how Steve Kerr gets. He likes to, load manage these players. Even with the whole Jordan Poole, Draymond Green incident that happened last week, where Draymond Green sucker punched him. Yeah, sucker punched him. I don't think that will hold him back. Wiggins looked great last season. I think Poole steps into his own again this year. Clay's going to have his step back, hopefully. Because last season we saw a lot of times where shot wasn't falling. He kind of looked a step or 2 slower on the defensive end. But I think with him having another offseason of getting healthy, getting back right, I think the Warriors will be right there in the neck of it when it comes to being a top seed. Trying to get them back into try to get back to the NBA Finals. And at number 1, I think we'll see the Denver Nuggets having the Western Conference Finals running through Denver. I believe that with Jamal Murray finally making his much-awaited return, that team's going to look unstoppable. You have Jokic, the 2-time reigning MVP. You're going to have Jamal Murray as a number 2 guy again. And then you have MPJ hopefully being more healthy this season than last. But, with him, he's another one of those guys who's consistently hurt. And then you have Aaron Gordon, who looked really solid playing the forward position. Him and MPJ kind of going back and forth and stuff. But with those 2 guys being a 3rd and 4th option, what more can a team? If I were to ask any other team, Aaron Gordon and MPJ being your 3rd and 4th option, would you take it over what you have now? I think most NBA teams will take that over their current situation. But we've seen the same story of the Nuggets getting to the NBA, getting to the playoffs and not, making it sustainable. But this season, so we're gonna go ahead and get into who I think is going to make it out of the Western Conference. So, first round, the Nuggets will more than likely see. Well, second round, let's forget this first round. Nobody cares about the first round. The first round, so you guys are going to learn very soon, well, at least at the end of the season, that I think the first round of NBA basketball is very pointless and that it should be best of 5 or 3 at most, because 7 games the lower seed never wins. Like it's very well, at least 7 and 8 never win. The amount of times that that's actually happened is very slim to none. So but that's a story for a different day, story for a different podcast episode. I think it's going to be Nuggets versus Mavs. No. I think the Pelicans will beat the Mavericks in the first round of the playoffs. I think I think the Pelicans have too much. No. They have enough guys to throw at Luka. They have Zion. They have who can move around with Luka, even though Luka's pretty slow, which makes it kind of weird to say move around with Luka. But you have Zion, Brandon Ingram. You have Zion and Brandon Ingram who can really keep up with him. Brandon Ingram, who looks like a great two-way player, even though he doesn't really get too much credit for it. Great on defense. But Pelicans beat the Warriors. Pelicans beat the Mavs first round. Lakers beat the Clippers. No, Clippers beat the Lakers. Finally get over that hump. LeBron, kind of an oasis season for him, especially in this advance, like this tail end of his career that we're seeing, just trying to get to finally playing with Bronny and probably Bryce, the next couple of years. And then Warriors, Nuggets, we can go ahead and shoot them into the second round. So second round, I think the Pelicans can beat the Nuggets. Then it'll come down to Game 7 in Denver. Then we're going to see the inexperienced rear its ugly head again. Nuggets beat the Pelicans more than likely in 7 in Denver. Even though we're going to see once again the emergence of Brandon Ingram, I think he takes a catapult. I believe he's on catapult into the top 10 of most people's top 10 in the NBA. I think he for sure has it in him to be a top 10 player in this league. And then second round as well, I think the Clippers beat the Warriors. Too much defense. You have PG and Kawhi in the same at wing. You're going to have more than likely boxing one scenario on Steph Curry, Kawhi, being the box, being the one. And then you have PG, who will probably guard Jordan Poole most of that game. But I think it will essentially come down to if Wiggins can once again do what he did this past postseason, which I don't think he will. So I do think the Clippers will play the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals, where the Clippers finally get their lick back against the Nuggets from the bubble and beat the Nuggets and finally hoist a Western Conference Championship title for the first time in franchise history. And I think you're hearing it here first. There's probably some crazy odds on this being the finals matchup. I think that it will be the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Los Angeles Clippers in the NBA Finals. And, I'm not really a man of hot takes, but this one is going to be a hot take. I'm just playing. It's not really a hot take. I think the Milwaukee Bucks will once again win the NBA championship. I think they get their second in 3 years, being the Los Angeles Clippers in 7. I don't think that the Los Angeles Clippers has anything to stop Drew Holiday, honestly. I think it's going to come down to Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is going to win them the game. He's going to be deserving of the Finals MVP, but he's not going to get it. Giannis is going to hoist it up again, second in 3 years, puts himself into the top 10 all time with his resume. So, we're done with my predictions for this upcoming NBA season. We have Luka winning the MVP, Bucks versus Clippers in the NBA Finals, Bucks beating the Clippers. So going to this last segment, we're going to get a little bit into the betting side of this show. Hopefully winning some money. I'm 95% sure we're going to win us some money tonight with tonight's games. Make sure you stay tuned in. Let's get some money. Welcome to the last segment of Through the Whistle, episode 2. We're going to get into the betting segment of this episode. Try winning some money, only if you're in a state where it's legally able to be sports gamble, got to be, responsible citizens of the United States. But in the first game, this is a little parlay. I'm all for the parlays. So this is a nice little 5-leg parlay. I got Embiid over 20.5 points. You got to alternate it though. You got alternate points for Embiid over 20.5, with him also having 10 plus rebounds. Jason Tatum, 20 points, as well as having 6 plus rebounds. And then you have James Harden. I don't really think he's going to try and score that much, so I'm not going to even touch his points. I'm not trusting him to get 19 or less than 19. I don't know which one. You never know with James Harden. So with that 5-leg parlay of Embiid over 20.5, 10 plus rebounds, Tatum 20 points, and 6 plus rebounds. Well, 6 rebounds or more, and Harden with 6 or more assists. That's plus 220. Plus 220 is great money. Put 100 down, get 220 back. Or, you just put this other parlay in with it. So this Lakers-Warriors parlay by itself is essentially a Lakers parlay with a little bit of a total parlay. And LeBron scoring 25 plus, which he's done what he did last year against the Warriors on opening night, as well as getting 6 or more rebounds, which is easy. He's the GOAT. Of course he's going to get 25 and 6. Come on, it's the GOAT. Let's be serious. Then you have AD having over 17.5 points, which means he has to score 18 or more for it to actually hit. And then you have the total game having more than 210.5 points. So having to score 211 or more points to win the parlay. And last year, when these teams faced off against each other in the first game of the season, they scored a combined 224 points. So 210.5 is going to be cake. Easy money. Shout out to KD. So that by itself, the Lakers by itself, will be plus 164. Put 100 down, get 164 back in return, and so on and so forth. You're going to do the other math, you want to put other amounts on it. But, we're here to make some money. If you put all, 9 of those together, the payout is plus 746. Plus 746, put 100 down, get 746 in profit. That's what I'm adding the 100 back that you'll get. That's all the boring stuff. So $746 in profit. You put all 9 of those together. Easy money, I think. All those should hit. Tie locks over here. But, before we get out of here, you see me with the You Matter hoodie. Seasonal depression's rearing its ugly head again. Seasons are changing. A lot of gloom, especially out here in the Northeast Ohio area. So make sure, for all my listeners and viewers who are watching this right now, make sure you go check in on family members, friends who, just check up on them. You never know who suffers from seasonal depression. It's a stigma that's always been around the Black community about mental health. And you never know who needs it. Just a little checkup, ask them how they're doing, if everything's all right. You never know. You never know how small a little conversation can help get someone's mental clear or make their day better. But with all that being said, I'm Ty Belcher. This is episode 2 of Through the Whistle podcast. And I'll see you guys on Friday with our betting segment, our betting episode, as well as a little bit of breakdown for the upcoming weekend of football. Y'all have a great day. Be safe, stay warm.